Okay, plan 12.5 kickoff. We're gonna go through our planning issue and just kind of talk through the high level things. We recently went through and updated, I think, across all the three categories, the different direction pages, so they're there. I think there's a little bit more that I specifically want to do with project management, and I'm going to work on that over the next few weeks. But high level, where we're trying to go within project management and then over the next few releases is kind of introducing some real-time functionality. And the first place we're starting on doing that is on Epic sidebars, which will bleed over into issue sidebars, which will then allow us to stress test our WebSockets and any cable setup, which will then kind of give us some feedback into the best way to do a real-time issue boards. So that's kind of order we're going in there. The other thing we want to provide is the ability to manage sprint and release cadences. So right now you can't track an issue against both a release and a sprint because there's only one milestone. So that's been a bit of a kind of big issue, and there's some short-term solutions and some long-term goals there. And then we also want to be able to have within an issue the ability to break down estimations by function, so it's easier for the respective function leads to determine capacity. And then we're looking at also introducing the concept of team velocity and volatility to understand over each given release or sprint what's the amount of work that's getting done, so that when it comes time to plan the next one, it is easier to make commitments that can be trusted and set realistic expectations, both with the team and with the external stakeholders. It also helps force trade-off discussions, which are a healthy thing. So those are all epics. If you want to look at them, you can. For this particular release, which is 12.5, I didn't link to a specific issue because there's a couple of them, but we more or less are continuing to work on refactoring the sidebar to support GraphQL. Part of that is also, I think, creating some pajamas components too. Is that correct, Donald? Scott? Yes, no?
Yeah, sorry. Just one for the drawer, helping out with creating that part.
Cool. And I think there's also a lot of bugs that are logged against various things that hopefully we will resolve as part of this. The first kind of feature issue that we want to tackle in 12.5 is allowing multiple milestones per issue. So the problem to solve here is we can't, like I mentioned earlier, there's no way within GitLab to associate an issue to more than one concurrent time-boxed milestone, which is very common. It's how Scrum works. It's how extreme programming works, which are very widely adopted methodologies for project management among the capital A Agile community. And the most common use case is, you might have two sprints within a release. You need the way to kind of track progress against both. So if you're interested, we can go through some of the use cases here, but it's pretty straightforward. These are all directly from our customers. These are their words, and I did not make them up. So, one of them basically said, since we require a milestone for an upcoming version of a given project, it's a big pain that we can't attach another milestone for a given release window. Workflows with multiple projects and additional operation tasks are usual today, even for small teams. So it would be nice if we had the tools to properly plan and observe them. And so, yeah, if it feels like I spend a lot of time trying to organize issues spanning multiple projects and multiple stakers, trying to avoid the single milestone limitation, we end up using labels as a poor replacement. So once we kind of get this in place, there is some bigger picture context too. We can we're also going to be showing more historically accurate data on milestones, and that's one. It's in 12.5 as well. We can also introduce the concept of milestone types, which would then let you better track velocity against a specific type. So if you want to know what your releases are, if they're the same type, then we know that they're related, and we can track them sequentially to then measure the velocity and volatility. We can also then do things like making them configurable and recurring, like on a recurring schedule, so that we can say, hey, like we do at GitLab, we release on the 22nd, we start our next milestone on the 23rd, or whatever the cadence is, and having those auto create milestones for us and manage that process, so we don't have to do the manual thing every time. So within this issue, we want to allow the user to associate the 5 milestones. Originally, I proposed 3. Some folks in the wider community pushed back and said that they're going to quickly hit that limit. So I think we do need to have a maximum, and we do need to have a limit for UX purposes mainly, because it's already going to be tricky to show like multiple milestones, like in an issue card or an issue list when you're searching for issues. But I think like this is it. We want to be able to associate 5 milestones, and we want to properly handle the UX for displaying the multiple milestones and issues, issue search list items, epics, any other locations where a reference to an issue also displays the associated milestones.
Gabe, do you mind giving some examples of issues with more than 2 milestones?
Sure.
Just
Yeah.
to have an idea.
So I originally said 3 because let me go down to the comments where that's being discussed. Let's see, 1 second, bear with me. I didn't necessarily fully understand all of that, but let's see here. It was Patrick, maybe. Okay, so I think you'll hit the limit of 3 pretty soon. Just add security-related issue to a milestone of a hypothetical old 1, 1x branch, current 2x branch, the next branch, and then you reach your limit. I'm sure that you come up with more milestones or a way to use that. Why not 5? Why not 7? The point was brought like, is it an artificial limit? I think part of what we've not done well in the past is not setting a maximum limit. I had originally voted for 3 because of the way that scaled agile frameworks works. And if you look at the basic kind of like rundown, this is a pretty popular thing that enterprises are doing. When you look at the full safe, you kind of have your top level, and then you have that you might want to track an issue at the business solutions and lean systems level, and then at the release level, and then like at the actual team level. So that's where you kind of would get to 3. But I also, if we can handle 5 and that works, great. If we just like think it's a better idea from a user experience standpoint to limit it to 3 right now, and then let the community push back if they're not happy with that, like I'm also fine with that. I could go either way. But from a technical standpoint, the engineers said that it was not going to cause any performance issues going from 3 to 5. It really didn't matter. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure. Any other conversation about this or pushback or just exploration? It's a good thing to do. I'm totally open to feedback. Oh yeah, the last thing that I'm trying to start doing on my issues as well, at least the direction level ones, is having some success metrics. And so if we can get the telemetry and to start tracking this, that'd be great. If not, I think this can be something from the database. We can open up another issue, but from a quantitative standpoint, the count of issues with more than 1 milestone, which means it's getting used. I think qualitative feedback is another success metric. It's not as like quantitative, but getting feedback and seeing if this is working for people being able to run sprints and releases and following Scrum more effectively. This also, I would like this to be GraphQL first, as with any new feature or things that we're refactoring, and make sure we update the public APIs and use pajamas where applicable. And then I did also have the acceptance criteria of the adding the telemetry to make sure that as soon as we launch this, we can measure it. Any questions or discussion that we want to have about this? Okay, cool. Moving on, next item. This is the historically accurate burndown charts. So the problem is right now, when a milestone ends, issues are typically moved to the next milestone, and burndown charts on the previous milestone then don't accurately reflect what was completed on that given milestone. Well, I guess it does what was completed, but not what wasn't completed and what got bumped to another sprint or another milestone. And so there's no way to say like, we started with X, we added Y amount of scope, we removed Z amount of scope, and then we ended up with the total completion of A, which is like not, how far off were we from our original target? How much do we scope creep? How much do we like hard miss? And how can that help us make better decisions? So the basic proposal is to add a series of events that we track along with milestones. So instead of it being kind of stateless, we move towards more like when the day is over, like we take a snapshot of what are the state of all the issues that are attached to this milestone, like which ones were dropped, so it was removed from the current milestone and it wasn't assigned. So it's more like we're abandoning this. We're not going to reprioritize it. We're just going to drop it. Moved, so it just gets moved to another milestone out of the current one, the context we're in. The issue is closed, which means it's probably completed. I guess there are use cases where it could be closed and not completed, but I don't want to get into that with this iteration. If there was an issue added, so the basic idea is if it was added a day or more after the start date. So a lot of teams will start a milestone and do their planning on that same day. So if we wait to start measuring the added until the day after it starts, you kind of have that wiggle room if they're going to finish their planning and then like get ready to go and finalize things that day. We'll start tracking scope added after the first 24 hours or first day that a milestone starts. And then also when a milestone is over, if it was a missed issue, which means it was open and not closed completed before the end of the milestone. And it may be moved after the milestone is done, but we will only want to mark it as missed because like that's the important metric there. Like when we track, are we moving things out before the end of the milestone and are we missing things at the end of the milestone? So I think we're working through some designs here and I'll kind of scroll down to those. I'll update the description with that. There's a couple of success metrics here. The big issue that I saw with milestones is also performance related. When I went and looked at GitLab's group level milestone, for 12.4, it took 11 seconds to load the page and another 10 seconds to render the burndown chart for a total like time of 21 seconds before I could see the burndown chart. I know like we have a lot of issues that are going on, but it's also if we're doing reference architectures for 25,000 users and 50,000 users and we're starting to scale things out, like that's unacceptable performance. So instead of like tackling that, all of the only kind of goal and acceptance criteria is here is that we at least make it better than it was before. We don't make it worse, just a little bit. It doesn't have to be anything huge. It's just like milestones load faster than they did before making this change. I don't want to make the performance worse. Same thing with documentation. We're going to need for this pajamas first. Whenever possible, we also need to update the public APIs. There's a lot of pushback at CAB that we were shipping incomplete APIs compared to feature parity. And they're completely right. There's lots of things that aren't in the API that they want in the API, but we don't take the time to do that when we're building new features in. And a lot of it was specifically around visibility into metrics and feedback on how teams are doing. And this is one of those things where like they're going to want to see the data too externally. Use GraphQL first, test added, the behavior and the proposals working. So that's like the basic primitive stuff. In terms of designs, I think we're still working through it. I don't see them on this one. Holly will attach them when she's ready to, but the basic idea is to add a vertical bar chart on the graph along that kind of aligns to the x-axis that represents these events, and then have total aggregate counts under it. And that way, like you can see over the time period when these events happened, and then you can see the total amount over the course of the milestone and aggregate count view. Any questions about this? Oh, also consideration for this is one of the other issues in 12.5 is making parity with the project milestones and the group milestones. So right now, the project milestones list a bunch of things that aren't on the group milestones, and we want to at least make sure that those two look the same. So we're going to put them on there, and then we're going to slowly refactor the milestone view to be more meaningful to, everyone. But given that constraint, like you might go look at the group milestone for GitLab and be like, oh, well, there's all this white space, but when we implement this, there's not going to be all this white space. So just something to keep in mind. Any conversation around this or feedback, questions, suggestions?
Is there any estimation happening already in development for this? It seems quite a big user story.
Yes, it is big. And that's where this is where Donald and Sean, if you watch this, if you push back on this and we want to like maybe just tackle one event per issue and like chunk it down that way, that's totally fine. And we can convert this into an epic. I think I left a question down here to bring that up. Let's see here. Can't remember where. Oh yeah, so how we should split it up. And I think one of the questions that this brings up from a technical standpoint is why it's really slow right now, is that we're we're computing like the values of the burnout chart every time we request the milestone. So we look through like all the issues, and then we like calculate the plots on the chart instead of just having like all that stuff pre-calculated, and then we just render the chart with like JSON, which is more time series E. So there, I think, was a proposal at some point to maybe use something like the resource. Let's see, what was it? The resource label events is like a potential pattern that we could reuse, and just for milestones. It's up to the engineers, but I would also like, I'm fine splitting this up along, vertical feature slices where it makes sense. So long as like, even if we just start by having just the things that missed, that's a win, right? And then we can go back and do the rest of things slowly over time. And I think I would like for the engineers to speak up on the best way to slice this up.
Yeah, Sean and I'll look through this, and we'll edit into the issue what our recommendation is on how to slice it. Do we think it'll be UX ready by the next week or so? Like, do we think we'll get it out of solution validation and into a build phase?
Yes. I've been talking with Holly a little bit offline, or in Slack, just like about some of these things, and I think she's trying to like understand the problem space, and I think as soon as she's comfortable with that, she's gonna put something in. But we're not far off, and it's not like overly complicated. Like, we're not adding a bunch of new things. We're maybe adding a couple different like data points on the graph and a couple new colors and a couple new labels underneath it. But yeah, I think it should be ready by early next week. Anything else? Okay, cool. I think moving on, my last one, and we already talked about this, is just the backstory is here. I think the previous PM decided to deprecate a lot of the data that's on a milestone. And I think if we look at this, like a lot of this stuff, and like the whole tabs down here with the issues that are part of that milestone, the merge requests, the participants, the labels, the projects, I think this is, I don't know if we'll have this or not, because I think this was for that weird type of milestone that is like the whatever dynamically created ones at the very, very top. It would be great if this could make it into the group milestones. If not, that's fine. It doesn't make sense on the project level. But the idea is like, this stuff doesn't exist right now anywhere. And a lot of the community was frustrated by the fact that we were removing it from the project level milestones, and that we haven't added it to the group level milestones, and we haven't provided a suitable replacement for the amount of like the information that they were finding very valuable on this view. So for the time being, we're going to put this back on the group view, and then we're going to go back and talk to the wider community about like, how can we iterate on this, and especially as we add in things like historically accurate data on a milestone and being able to start tracking velocity on that. And like, we will probably refactor and rework what the UX looks like and what information is displayed in a more meaningful way than it is now. But this is kind of just like a stopgap between now and then, and we'll satisfy. It's like a good 80% solution until we have time and bandwidth to go back and really dig in and do good customer discovery and good UX iterations on it. Any questions about this? Cool. That's it. I'm done with my things. I'm gonna stop sharing. Or I guess Ken, you can take over if you'd like and go through your items.
All right, see my screen? I'm assuming yes. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. All right, so hey guys, Keenan O'Keefe, product manager focusing on portfolio management. So very much like Gabe discussed with project management, we have been working on putting together a kind of 1 year from now press release, which is linked here. And we're also looking at fleshing out portfolio management into some additional categories, mainly looking at agile portfolio management, and then also expanding roadmaps as a category function in and of itself. And encourage you guys to check those links out when you have time, so that you have a full understanding of what we're trying to drive towards, and then keep an eye out for changes, because we are actively still iterating on these as we move forward, both in preparation of, hey, what's our 1 year plan, as well as, okay, what's coming in the future past that as well. So exciting, but keep it up, give feedback, comments, all that good stuff. So big epics that I want us to be focusing on of particular importance over the next coming releases is improving our epic list and tree view. So as we're trying to drive adoption of epics and helping people plan work out over time, making sure that that list is easily visible, usable, and mutable is super important. Improving the ability to create and link epics and issues. So they're not necessarily always the easiest things to create or merge to each other or link them. So we're trying to find the best ways to just help people create things quickly without having to context switch or switch to multiple tabs to do it. Evolving how epics are displayed on the roadmap. Right now, epics are just a bar that exists on the roadmap with not a lot of data and not a lot of functionality. So we were looking at the bunch of functionality to kind of display them better and give them opportunities to interact with each other, and you can interact with the roadmap. This goes back, or related is also just those relationships on the roadmap as well. So we're wanting to show multiple epics and how they, sub epics and how they're nested under their parent epics, and then eventually getting to showing issues on the roadmap where it's applicable as well. And then milestone start dates, due dates in the roadmap. We need to start surfacing a lot of this information up on the roadmap so you can actually see, okay, my epic is in flight, but how does that relate to my milestone that it and its children items are associated to, so I can actually track progress towards that milestone. So to make progress towards those, looking at 12.5, we're really focusing on improving our epics functionality and just visualizations. A lot of the roadmap stuff is in solution validation, working with the UX team to get great designs and MVCs to step into that slowly. So you should start seeing those come into the queue for 12.6. But for 12.5, we're mainly focusing on improvements to epics. So we'll just go through these one at a time. So the big one, I think, which we've gotten a lot of customer feedback as well as internal frustration around this, is epics are often very difficult to find inside of the UI when you're trying to hunt them down, either hunt epics down as a list or actually hunt down a specific one. So as we've been discussing over the last couple of weeks, what we decided to do is actually move epics into the left-hand nav between repository and issues. Excuse me. So again, easier to find in the left nav, and then it's also, of course, contextual. If I'm at the group, I'll see the group level epics and everything that bubbles up from the subgroups under it as well. So I don't know if we actually have a design in here or not, Alexis. But I mean, that one's pretty straightforward. We're going to have an epics nav item on the left hand that expands out and lets you navigate to it pretty quick. Are there any questions on that one? Again, that one's fairly straightforward, but if we want to have a discussion, let's go for it.
I was just going to ask it will be until we have what happens when we have project level epics? Are they going to commingle in that space? Does that make sense?
I think that's definitely one of the open questions that we're sorting through with our validation work right now, is how do you continue that contextualization when we do expand it down to epics? Right now, I think we're focusing on the group and subgroup item as right now as the MVC. But yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Alexis or Holly, if you're on, I don't know if you've had specific thoughts on that or not, if we wanted to talk through it now.
Are you talking specifically like in the sidebar following that pattern?
Yep. Or the left-hand nav, yeah. But
yeah, I'm thinking it would, sidebar, sorry, I'm in sidebar world. I think it would follow the pattern of issues. So be pretty similar contextually to that, but it's something we'll look into a little bit more.
Yeah, it seems until there's project level epics, it's like breaking a standard convention of navigation, and that like you don't have access to objects within a project that belong to a group. So like, just like a group doesn't have a repository, a project doesn't have epics. And so to me, it seems like people might be having a hard time discovering them because they're not realizing the context that they're in, because the sidebars look the same as like group. Like everything between a project and a group look exactly the same, which is why I find myself getting confused. It's not that they're not discoverable. It's like I can't ever remember what context I'm in, like what main entity. So like it takes me a second to then look at the breadcrumbs and be like, oh crap, like I'm in a project. I have to go back up the tree to like get to the group, the subgroup or whatever group it is that has the epics in it. Does that make sense?
And I think because we have the same avatar for everything, it's a little confusing, and maybe users do as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I just would be careful about introducing entities into a project that belong to a group. And I guess it's fine. It's just like, are we going to then, whenever we have project level epics, is it going to be confusing when you're like on the project level and then you also like want to go look for things and then you're going to like bring in the group level at that same place? I guess it's just food for thought.
Yeah, no, I think the goal is that, again, it's contextual, right? So if I'm at the project level, then I'll see the project level epics. But if I come back, like, if I get in this level, I think what we're really talking about is, excuse me, come out load, elevating that out a little more from the subgroup and further down the line. But yeah, I mean, again, what we'll do is we'll actually start pinging everybody as we get some more solid design ideas around and elicit some feedback. But again, I think there is an opportunity to solve it. I mean, again, we saw this when we were at that offsite a couple of weeks ago, where this was one of the conversations we kept having. And then the video sessions we had trying to get them set up with their POC org, like this came up multiple times. So I think what we're really just trying to do is find that iterative step in between what can we do now to help service it and what can we do once we do have the project level epics. But
that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So now we're talking to the second one, add static issue and epic counters to the epic page. So as you can actually watch in this GIF, if it's showing up during the screen share, my epics and issues, we've got those fun little icons up at the top that tell you how many are there. They actually do not include all of the items under them. Like the integer actually increases as you expand the items, decollapse them. So what we want to do is update that so that those are actually reading all of the individual issues and epics under there and displaying a correct number up at the top, versus like you can see here, as soon as I expand the sub epic, suddenly my issue number expands and increases. So it was really just trying to drive accurate information up at that level and drive some consistency in how we're showing people how much work is attached to this individual item. Questions, thoughts, discussion? Cool. Moving on. Allow users to search for epics when adding related epics. So right now, when we're adding a sub epic or adding an epic to a parent epic to make it a child epic, you actually have to copy and paste the link directly in there. Instead of actually having a populated list or a search function. So we're really just quality of life improvement to allow people to attach items to the epic itself without having to navigate to another page or open a new tab, copy the link, and then switch back. All right, I'm trying to, okay. Questions, thoughts, discussion? Moving on, all right. Sorry, I'm trying to keep track of the chat too. All right, and similar, related, allow users to search for epics and issues or at least view a list when adding them to the widget. When users want to add an epic or issue to an issue, they must first copy the link. Same story there. Actually, are these the duplicate ones we talked about, Donald? Or he just left, I think.
Yeah, he just left.
Okay, yeah. So I think this is specifically focusing on that widget inside of the epics page and including the search list as well. So those kind of walk hand in hand together. Signed. All right. So next one is adding an epic option while creating a new issue in the UI. So this is expanding on some functionality that we have currently, which is we're also trying to roll out the ability to create an issue directly from an epic versus just linking one that you already have copied in your clipboard. But this is also going to let you do that from adding an epic as well. So we're trying to just drive that functionality across both epics and issues so it's consistent. Questions or thoughts there? All right. All right. View start and due dates in an epic list view. So we're looking at your your epics list, what we're trying to do is just bubble up those start and due dates inside of this view so that you can actually have more information looking at your list. You don't actually have to open each individual epic up to get that data. This should help allowing just encouraging proper prioritization through stack ranking those items in a list so that we know, hey, this one's due earlier. Let's make sure we start working on it sooner. All right. Allow changing an item's parent epic using drag and drop interactions. So as you know, we are working to roll out a more advanced epic tree that allows you to drag and drop items across epics and issues. This one will allow you to actually drag an item or drag an issue from an epic into a new epic, reassigning the parent. All right. And then our last one, view issue counts and closed issues in the epic. Let's see. Sorry guys, mine's taking a bit to load. I think it's because of the screen share. Come
on. We can see it, I think.
Can you? It's still blank
Yeah.
on my page. Or there it is. Okay. Yep, there we go. Thanks, guys. Cool. So what we're looking now is, so this is an older issue. You're seeing it's been open for about 2 years, but we did some cleanup on it to get it up to current standards. So you can see this, a lot of the designs that are linked in here are older. But what we're looking is showing the actual issue count and the close count. So when you're looking at the epic, you can see the proper information on it. So what we had before, we've updated our icons since that. So that's what I was trying to scroll down to. So we have the green and blue icons now on related issues. But if you look in here, what we're going to do is actually have the closed items get sorted down to the bottom of the list so that the open ones maintain up at the top. And then change the background to be a little bit of a softer gray to kind of get a visual distinction between what's still open and what's currently closed. Questions or thoughts on that one? Perfect. Cool. Yep. So just quick recap. Oh yeah. So we actually have a couple bugs we're going to work towards in a security issue and some tech debt around the Epic GraphQL API response. But what we're really, again, it's a lot of quality of life and small functional improvements just to get epics closer to on par with how issues are, just how you're able to work with issues and specifically being able to link them between each other, make it easier to create them and easily be able to identify state of work, what's closed, what needs to be executed on next when looking at the epic issue view. If there's no other thoughts, comments, or questions, I can go ahead and turn it over to Mark.
Sounds good, thanks. Let me see if I can get the sharing working here. There we go, can everybody see that?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, I'm gonna try to shrink that so it's a little easier. Here we go, so I'm Mark Wood. I'm in charge of the Certify stuff here at the PM side. And currently we're working on two major topics here. One is requirement management, then I'm on the service desk. Requirements management is a yet to be released feature, but we're hoping to actually have an MVC in for not this release, 12.5, but 12.6. In the meantime, we do have a epic here, as well as some issues that we're working through, trying to get them through UX work so that we are ready to go to release an MVC in 12.6 that would allow users to create requirements and link them together. So you'd have a level of requirements, high level requirements traced to low level requirements type of thing. So that's our current status. We do have that issue open as well as an epic tracking that work. In addition, we're also doing something we're really excited about, which is to provide the ability to have blocking issues. Currently in the UI, you have the idea of related issues, but you cannot tag an issue as blocking another issue. So let me go ahead and open this up. Currently for an MVC, what we're looking to do is just allow the concept of blocks or is blocked by. And being able to do that will allow people to visualize what is holding up their issues, or if there is a blocking factor, be able to actually tag a blocking issue, and it helps with prioritization and planning. We have future issues we'd like to implement on top of that will add more visual information surrounding that, add warnings. If you go to close an issue that is currently blocked, it would give the user a warning that would say, hey, this issue is blocked by another issue. Are you sure you want to close? And ideally, in the long run, when we look at a board, you'll be able to see issues that are blocked in a slightly different background color or some other visual indicator that would allow you to recognize the blocking issues at a glance, as opposed to having to click through and actually look to see what's holding things up. Any questions about the blocking issues? Great. So that's sort of the requirements management side of things. From the service desk side of things, we're really trying to push to get service desk from viable to lovable. And the service desk right now is very viable. There's a lot of people using it. I've actually been talking to people over the course of the last couple of weeks. But two of the things that really popped up for me and comments that I've gotten was the incoming issues. It would be nice to be able to templatize those. And the outgoing service desk email responses, it would be great to be able to templatize those. So there are two current epics in place, one for each of those. The idea of an incoming issue being templatized means you can use all of the quick actions that you can already use in comments or other areas around the issue boards. So that if you wanted to, let's say, add a label for all service desk issues and assign them to a specific user, you could add those quick actions to your template, and then when the email came in, that template would be appended, the issue would be created, and you'd automatically get the label added or labels added and the assignment done. So that's where we're focusing on to start with. So currently that is this issue within the epic linked here. So I'll go ahead and open that one up. There's been a lot of really good discussions. It's currently approaching UX ready. I don't think it's quite there yet, but we're getting very close. So this should be ready to go. And as I was saying sort of before, this will enable you to have a template surrounding all incoming issues to your service desk. So that should help to make it a little bit more usable for people. And then the final issue we're going to be putting in is there's a bug fix going in for 12.5 for the service desk where duplicate issues are created when users reply to an email. This was a pretty heavily upvoted feature for service desk users, and it's causing them a lot of grief. It doesn't really recognize it here because it's on another epic where people are doing the voting, but effectively what's happening is if a service desk issue is created via email, the user receives an email back saying the issue is created. If they reply to that currently or comment from that email chain, the service desk is not catching that that's a reply or a forward. And what it's doing is creating a second issue with the reply or forward nomenclature as well, which is causing duplicate issues and just some issues for some of our customers. So we are trying to fix that as well in this release. Any questions?
I have one quick question, not regards to this one, but in regards to blocking issues MVC.
Absolutely.
Are we considering using the related issues with an option to say this is related and it's blocking something else?
I think the current concept is it's going to show up in a very similar manner, probably within that same list, but it may have a different icon next to it or something. We're still working through all the details on how we'll visually display that, but effectively blocking issues are definitely related issues. So they're sort of a subclass of that or subset of that. So the blocking issue is just a type of relation, or is blocked by as another type of relation. There still will be the option to relate issues to one another and say this one is related to this because they're similar or they have similar use cases or similar solutions. But in the issue or in the situation where one issue is actually blocking another issue from being implemented, we wanted a stronger definition of that.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, that's all I had.
All right. Yep. If there's no other questions, thoughts, or discussion, I'll go ahead and end the recording and get it uploaded. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot.